Hi. So today we're going to show you how to use Rmarkdown. You're going to be doing a lot of your homework in Rmarkdown, so I want you to be familiar with how it works. Rmarkdown is it's the opposite of a markup language. It's a markdown language. So it's a lot like HTML. There's codes that we can put in here, except they're abbreviated. So I just want you to see how this works. So notice I've opened my .rmd file here at the top, and you should understand how this is going to work. I'm going to remove this so I can knit this. So the end goal is that you will submit a Word file or an HTML file. I think it might have to be a Word file. So when I knit this, it's basically going to take the pieces of my Rmarkdown syntax and mark them up. So this is what you see: the title, Intro to RStudio. It shows up here as the title. And I could come in here, notice it says enter your full name. If I come in here and change this to Matt Pickard, and I save it and I knit again, you'll see it now says Matt Pickard. And so there's some simple syntax. Everything you see between these dash lines is what's called the YAML header, and it's set up so that we can configure how this file gets processed. You don't have to worry too much about that other than replacing your name at the top. So, and then there's some options here that get set, and we won't go into those. I will say this option right here will probably not be inside your homework files, and this is what happens when I comment that out. Instead of seeing the errors in my file, I get the errors down here, so you'll have to resolve the errors. And this one here says no package called New York City Flights 13, and if I double click on it, it takes me to the approximate area of where it is. And so it's saying you're trying to load this library and that library doesn't exist. And so that brings us up here. In this case, you'll have to make sure that you have all the necessary packages installed. And as you can see at the top here, when you open the file, if I'm loading a library that you need, it'll prompt you here. So you can just click install and it'll install it. You'll see it down here, install. Now while that's installing, it's important to understand that you're only going to install the package once. That's why you'll usually see the install.packages commented out. So if I remove that and if I hit Control Enter, I can send that install packages down to the terminal. So once again, that's Control Enter. I put my cursor on the code and hit Control Enter. And you see it'll install it again, but it's not necessary. You can think of a package like an app on your phone. You go out to the Play Store, the Apple Store, and you install it once. But when you want to use it, you have to load it. And so that's what this install packages is like going out to the App Store. So we only do that once, but then we need to go load that in. And so if I hit Control Enter, you'll see it loads my Tidyverse packages in. If I hit Control Enter, it loads in that New York City flights data. And then we can start, well, let's take a look at this. If I go to try to knit now, wait for it. Looks like it's loading the packages. And that's really important, and you can see that it actually ran this code here where we're seeing the package load. And so you're probably going to want to comment that out. But you'll see it actually, down below, we took flights, and we just said, show me what's inside flights, because flights is defined in New York Flights 13. If I do that here, Control Enter, you can see it just shows me the top part of the flights. So I can get a feel, and it also tells me that there's 7 more variables. So that's the default behavior of Tibbles, which is like the Tidyverse's data frame. But when I do view flights, it actually brings it up in a window. And this probably isn't good behavior inside an Rmarkdown file. And so we'll comment that out. There's also another option to do that. We can use the pipe. So we go back here and look at it. That's our pipe, and that's a tidyverse thing that you should have learned in DataCamp. But we're going to comment that out as well. But you can see that it basically processed my file, and I can see all my output. And the important thing is when I do something, like I say, show me the data frame, it gives me the output. So here's the output of that command that I ran. And you're going to see this again and again, and we'll show you that a little bit later. So Rmarkdown is pretty simple. You can go out and Google Rmarkdown, and there's a whole website that'll show you the syntax. So it's just like Python notebooks. It's R's version of Python notebooks. You can notice that these double hashtags get converted to a header 1. Triple hashtags get converted to a header 3. And this install packages, obviously, it's not getting converted. So I'm thinking we need a space. Yeah, and so you can see now that we've got a space, it treats it like that's a header 4, and so we'd have to go fix all these too. And so you need to be aware that stuff like this is text. It gets rendered and marked up as text, as headers, and then I could come in here and I could write some text underneath it and say, this is how we install packages. And when we do that and we knit it, you'll see it adds that text right there. And then these are code blocks. They begin with 3 backticks and these squiggly brackets, and they end with 3 backticks. And you should take hints from the code colors that are in here. If I accidentally delete those backticks, you can now see that my code block extends clear down to the bottom of the next code block, and then it encompasses things that were intended to be as text. So when I do that, what happens is Rmarkdown, the processor, the knitr processor, sees this and it says, oh, that's Markdown. That is just going to be text, and here are the instructions. There's 4 hashtags. I need to make that a header 4. This is plain text right there. But then it comes here and it says, oh, everything in between there I need to hand over to R, and R is going to execute it. And then I'm going to take what R hands me back and I'm going to display it down here. So for instance, if I wanted to go flights right there, and I could just say select, let's see, let's just select the year column. So it's going to hand that over to R, and it's going to show me the output underneath it. Oh, and it looks like we need to install, we need to load something here. We're missing a package. It doesn't recognize that. Oh, and the reason is because, oh, this is actually a really good thing to demonstrate. The reason is I'm trying to call this before I have loaded my tidyverse package. And so it's all going to go sequential. And you'll find that this happens as soon as, even though I've already loaded my tidyverse package down here and it worked, as soon as I hit knit, my whole environment goes away and it's as if I had to start from scratch. So beware of that. Not sure why we're still seeing it here, but we won't spend time debugging that here. Beware of the order that you call things in, because you can start working and then you hit knit, and it works while you're in your environment down here on your console, but it doesn't work when you go to click knit, and that's because it takes all these environment variables that you'll see this environment's empty initially, but if I go in and I load that, and if I store this inside temp, you'll see now I have this variable called temp. But when I hit knit, it deletes all my environment and I have to start over. So be aware of that. I want to show you some tricks to make, well actually there's another video I posted, but I'll review a few of the tricks. Once you've sometimes you have to work here on the console to get stuff right. So if I type in like flights, then I want it, and to type the pipe, if you hold down on Windows, if you hold down Control Shift M, it's a shortcut to type the pipe. And then you can do select, and then if we did year and day. So I get it right, and I'm like, that's exactly what I want. Well, R keeps track of your history here, and you see at the bottom of my history I have it. Well, I can then click over here in my source file, and I can click the element in my history and say to source, and it'll populate it over here. So I can go reassemble my script from my history. If I wanted to run it again, I could click to console, and it'll shoot it down here. When I'm in my source file, like I said, I can click on something and I can hit Control Enter, and it runs it down in the console. I can also run an entire chunk by using this little play button. And I can run all the chunks up above by clicking that. And then there's ways to modify chunk options, which we won't go into. So that's a quick introduction to Rmarkdown. You're going to have to be able to debug your code so that it will actually knit, because you're going to be turning in either a PDF or a Word document. I don't think Blackboard will accept an HTML file. And so what you can do is once you generate HTML, you can click open in browser, and then you can just go ahead and print it, and you can print it to and save it as a PDF and submit it that way.